Okay, thank you, Alexa. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar on ACME. This is ACME Phase 1. And so there's a number of presenters that are going to be providing the information today. I'll give a brief introduction and just welcome you to this webinar. So like we've done in previous webinars, we're going to present a bunch of information around the topic, and then there'll be options for an opportunity rather for questions and answers at the end. So as usual, please put your questions in the chat, and then we will have someone moderating questions for the full panel to answer those questions afterwards. So I want to thank, first of all, the faculty leads that will be presenting this information today. In English, we've got Professor Andrew Sottile and James Gentile. In mathematics, we've got Professor Freeman and Deb Rimkus. And in ESOL, which is English for speakers of other languages, we have Moeckel-Rieke, and we've got Melanie Majeski. So thank you very much to the faculty leads. They will be presenting the overview of the Phase 1 plans for math, English, and ESOL. And then also with us at the end for questions, we've got two members of the academic leadership team, AVP Feest and Mike Stefanowicz. They're the liaisons to the faculty leads. We also have Laura McCarthy, who is the project lead for ACME, and Tam O'Day Stevens will be moderating questions as well during the chat. Okay, so just to set the stage, I just want to first say, you know, there's a lot that's been done with ACME over the past few years. We are deeply committed to this work, and I just want to clarify that it is an ACME phase in, not phase out. We have slowed down the implementation of ACME in response to concerns that have been raised by folks. There's just a lot going on with the merger and a lot to do to try to do full-scale implementation for fall of 2023. So we're still targeting fall 2025 full-scale implementation, which is in alignment with the board policy. But we are providing the resources and the supports that the faculty leads have indicated are needed in order to roll out ACME in a manageable way. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the math folks. And I believe it's going to be Professor Freeman and Rimkus are going to be presenting this piece of it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Debbie Rimkus. I'm a professor of mathematics from Quinebaug Valley and one of the math discipline leads for the alignment and completion of Math and English project, otherwise known as ACME. I'm going to lead off the math presentation, and then my colleague, Freeman from Capital, will take over at the midway point. Next slide. One of the questions that I get when I tell people that I'm working on ACME is why? Why is this important to the students of Connecticut? Next slide. To answer that question, let's look at how students are doing in math right now. KPI is a mnemonic for Key Performance Indicator. KPIs are leading indicators that have been shown to correlate with degree completion. KPI 4 is the percentage of first-time college students who have completed math with a C or better in their first year. The bar graph shows the percentages for each campus for fall 2021. Along the bottom, in a time series graph, representing the average of KPI 4 for the entire community college system over the past 9 years, you can see that the average has been very stable over that time period, ranging from a low of 26% to a high of 31%. That high of 31% represents a bit of good news in that it is the most recent average from fall 2021. However, the overall message of this graph is that less than 1/3 of our students complete math in their first year. And this has been the status quo for a long time. Next slide. This is the same data as the previous slide, but now it has been disaggregated by race as well as by gender. The top row shows women and the bottom row shows men. Notice the equity gaps between races. Black students in column 2 and Hispanic students in column 3 are less likely to complete math in their first year than Asian students in column 1 and white students in column 5. This disparity has been the status quo for a long time. If we keep doing what we have been doing, we can expect the same results that we've been seeing for the past 9 years. Our students deserve better. This is why ACME is happening. Next slide. Through research, professional development, and participation in our mathematics professional organizations, math faculty have become aware of promising initiatives that increase completion of math in the first year, as well as close equity gaps among racial and ethnic groups. The first of these initiatives, Math Pathways, seeks to align students' math courses to their programs of study and career goals. This has led to the development of 3 main math pathways at CT State: the quantitative reasoning pathway, the statistics pathway, and the pathway to calculus. Because intermediate algebra does not contain prerequisite content to support the quantitative reasoning and statistics pathways, it has been removed from these pathways. In the pathway to calculus, intermediate algebra has been replaced with a co-requisite support course for college algebra. The second initiative on the slide, co-requisite support courses, seeks to replace prerequisite developmental courses with co-requisite support courses that are offered in tandem with the college level course to deliver remedial content as needed in a just-in-time format. Next slide. This chart shows the aligned math courses for CT State, which have been designed to encompass math pathways and co-requisite support courses. There are 3 main pathways. At the top in purple is the quantitative reasoning pathway, consisting of the entry-level or gateway course, Math 1100, that may be accompanied by a co-requisite support course. Underneath in orange is the statistics pathway. At the gateway level, students may take a 3-credit or a 4-credit version of Statistics 1 that may be accompanied by a co-requisite support course. Down at the bottom in blue is the pathway to calculus. This consists of the Gateway College Algebra course, which may be accompanied by a co-requisite support course, and is followed by pre-calculus and then other courses in the calculus sequence, which are not pictured here. Next slide. Co-requisite support courses have been shown to be effective in many states. All the states in orange on this map have either implemented co-requisites at scale or are in the process of implementing co-requisites. Math faculty in our system have been working to bring co-requisites to our students since 2017. And after much research and planning, we are ready to begin phasing in their implementation in the fall of 2023. Next slide. This is data from one of the states, Georgia, that has implemented co-requisites at scale. At the bottom are gray and blue line graphs representing the completion rates of Gateway College level courses using the traditional prerequisite remediation. The bolder graphs at the top show the improvement achieved with full co-requisite implementation. Notice that students at all placement levels on the ACT have benefited from co-requisite implementation. Overall, there has been more than a 40% increase in completion from 2013 to 2018 in Georgia. Also notice that the yellow, green, and red graphs, which represent data disaggregated by race, show an elimination of equity gaps. Data from other states show similar results. Next slide. The ACME math redesign will enable our students to become more actively engaged in decisions about their math education, provide them with rigorous content aligned to their programs of study, and provide support that will set them up for success in their Gateway math courses, as well as in future courses. And now I'll turn the presentation over to my colleague, Andre Freeman.
Thanks, Debbie. Good afternoon, everyone. I will provide information on the planned phase-in of math pathways and co-requisite courses in 2023 and the next few years. Next slide, please. Before I begin, I would like to note that the phase-in plan which we are sharing today is a culmination of extensive planning, work, and collaboration by math faculty across Connecticut State campuses. The goal of our phase-in plan is to ensure that all campuses are prepared to fully implement math pathways and co-requisite math courses by fall 2025. To get there, campuses will be supported to decrease the number of students who are enrolled in developmental math courses and increase the number of students who are enrolled in co-requisite math courses in quantitative reasoning, statistics, and college algebra. This shift will ensure that in their first semester or first year, all CT State students are enrolled in a credit level math course that is aligned with their academic interests. When the policy implementation begins, CT State will engage in ongoing data collection and assessment efforts to examine the impact of the new courses and policies on student success. A particular focus of this work will be an examination of student equity outcomes, student equity considerations, ensuring that math pathways and prerequisite courses improve outcomes for all students. Next slide. Let's take a closer look at the phase-in plan for fall 2023. In fall 2023, campuses may continue to offer developmental math courses. The CT State catalog contains 2 prerequisite developmental math courses, a 3 contact hour elementary algebra course and a 6 contact hour pre-algebra and elementary algebra course. Both courses can be offered next year. In fall 2023, campuses will significantly reduce the number of sections of intermediate algebra offered. The rationale for this reduction is that CT State students will no longer be required to take intermediate algebra prior to enrolling in a transferable credit level math course. This change has significant implications. Students in non-STEM degrees who prior to the ACME policy placed in and enrolled in intermediate algebra will now be able to enroll directly into quantitative reasoning or statistics. Students in STEM degrees who prior to the ACME policy placed in and enrolled in intermediate algebra will now be able to enroll directly into college algebra with co-requisite. The removal of intermediate algebra as a prerequisite course for transferable credit level math courses will result in the eventual discontinuation of intermediate algebra from CT State. Also, campuses may continue to offer non-transferable credit level math courses for students in specific programs. Students who take these courses will not be required to take developmental math courses first. And lastly, in fall 2023, campuses will begin piloting co-requisite courses in quantitative reasoning and statistics for students pursuing non-STEM degrees. Next slide. Next slide. So what are the next steps to support us accomplishing our goal? Math faculty will be supported in a variety of ways. Currently, subgroups of math faculty throughout CT State are developing model co-requisite courses for the new math pathways. These model courses will be shared with faculty in spring 2023. Faculty may choose to teach the model courses or adapt them. The model courses will simply be a resource for faculty. Considering the short time frame, we want to ensure that faculty have quality instructional materials that they can use in fall 2023. Also, we will schedule co-requisite chat webinars that will provide details and guidance on math pathways, co-requisite implementation, best practices, and key considerations around course design. Webinars will be open to all faculty and be recorded. Math faculty can also complete online asynchronous Blackboard training courses to prepare to teach the co-requisite courses and math pathways. These short courses will provide details on the model courses and support faculty to create syllabi, course schedules, activities, and assessments. Lastly, math faculty can participate in professional learning communities centered on enhancing teaching via evidence-based practices. We are currently facilitating a faculty learning community on implementing active learning in college algebra. This learning community is supported by AMATIC and funded by a National Science Foundation grant. Our plan is to expand this work and establish additional faculty learning communities for math faculty and other math pathways. Next slide. Campuses will be supported in a variety of ways. We recognize that the successful implementation of math pathways and co-requisite math courses will involve our entire college community. So we will continuously share information, collaborate, and collect feedback from all internal stakeholders. This includes department chairs, faculty in other disciplines, program coordinators, and staff in student support and academic support areas. In spring 2023, we will support department chairs and program coordinators with course scheduling to ensure that campuses are able to offer the appropriate number and type of co-requisite and college level math courses. We recognize that the implementation of ACME is a major change. It is very important that all stakeholders are prepared to successfully implement the new model and are comfortable contributing to the implementation. By working together, we are confident that the changes we make will foster increased student success. Next slide. This concludes our presentation. This is a high-level overview of the phase-in plan and our thinking for the next academic year. Debbie and I would be happy to answer questions and provide more detailed information on these topics. Our email addresses are listed here. Also, more information is available on the CT State ACME website. We thank you for your time and for listening to our presentation. Now I will turn it over to my colleagues in English.
Thanks, Debbie and Andre, and thanks to Provost Lapierre Dreger for hosting today. My name is Andrew Sottile. I'm English faculty and department co-chair at Manchester, and I'm pleased to be with you. Before we dive into some data on the English side, I want to share with you a statement from our former provost, Dr. Jane Gates, about the ACME policy. She said, "This is an asset-based policy. It focuses on understanding what our students can accomplish when they receive needed support. It is bold, evidence-based, and informed by what students have already accomplished as a result of their high school, military, or professional careers." Understanding this asset-based thinking, really believing that our students can do the work, is going to be a key point for all of us in the coming years. So keep that in mind as we review some local KPIs on the next slide. KPI 5 for Connecticut State Community Colleges looks at first-year students and their success in English. Debbie gave a much more thoughtful breakdown of what this chart means than I would, but the key number there is 44% at the top. Only 44% of our students in the system are passing college level composition in the first year. And when on the next slide, we disaggregate that our Latinx and our Black students, we see this completion rate drop significantly to 35%. These numbers make clear why developmental reform is so urgent. And if we dive a little deeper on the next slide, looking at KPI 5 in placement, we see significant achievement gaps between our developmental students and our students who place in college level courses. System-wide, a first semester student who placed in English 101 was more than twice as likely to pass that college level English class in their first year as a first semester student who placed in developmental English. And on the next slide, we see that these achievement gaps raise even greater concerns when we look through that equity lens. I want to reference the third stated goal of the ACME policy here, which aims to eliminate the completion gap in gateway college level transferable coursework in English and mathematics, specifically the gap that exists for Black and Latinx students when compared to white students. When we disaggregate this data by race, we see these achievement gaps become even more vast. Only 22% of our Black students who placed into developmental English courses earned a C or better in college level English in their first year. So that means 78% of those students are getting caught in the cycle of developmental coursework that the ACME policy aims to restructure. Further, we know these Black students are disproportionately placed into developmental courses. So getting caught in that cycle, which often means pushing them out of higher ed, has a significant impact on that group of students. And nationally, as the next slide shows, we've seen the high impact changes brought about by co-requisite developmental reform. In places like Colorado, Tennessee, and Georgia, students who require remediation and who place directly into gateway courses are completing those courses at a far greater clip than those students who place into a developmental sequence. We hope to add Connecticut to that list. So despite the anecdotes we can all share about the successes we see in our developmental and gateway courses, the data suggests it's really time to restructure the remediation we provide to our most vulnerable students. And I'll pass it now to my colleague, Dr. James Gentile, who can talk us through how that change begins in fall 2023.
The next slide. And we'll just move on to the next slide. Our current goal is full implementation by fall of 2025, as Andre and Debbie have already indicated. During this period, there'll be a gradual increase in the number of students in our gateway course, with or without support, and a gradual reduction of students in developmental courses. Throughout, we'll be collecting both quantitative data, the parameters of which are largely identified by the ACME policy, and qualitative data focused on the curriculum and the student experience. We're working with both the Director of Assessment, Joe Cullen, and an ACME English work group as we identify assessment issues. Next slide. Now here's an overview of current enrollments at the 12 community colleges. We'll emphasize that placement practices and course structures are not consistent at all those colleges. So looking at this chart, we see about 59% of our students place in English 101, about 20% place in English 101 with embedded support, and 21% place in some form of developmental English. Next slide. In fall of 2023, we're proposing a directed placement process based on GPA and comparable multiple measures. Students will be advised to take a prerequisite, a co-requisite, or a gateway course. We're still awaiting feedback from our ACME team, but currently our cutoff for English 1010, so 101 becomes 1010 in fall of 23, will be 2.8 in the fall. This number was based on data review that suggested a majority of students with a GPA of 2.7 or higher across all student populations succeeded in English 101. During this period, we'll also be piloting our guided self-placement mechanism in classrooms. We hope to understand if the questions will help students thoughtfully determine whether or not they should elect the co-requisite course. Next slide. Using this process and adjusted GPA scores, in fall of 2023, we'll see a 10% increase of students in English 1010 to 69%. We'll see a slight decrease of students in the co-requisite course to 19%, and a 9% decrease of students in developmental ed courses to 12%. Our current proposal includes both a 3 and 6 contact hour developmental ed course. Next slide. Let's pause a second to look at the English 1010 and English 1010W curriculum, as there have been many questions about both. The English 1010 outcomes were developed and approved by CSET in 2012 in alignment with the PA 1240 policy. They were maintained during last year's alignment process. The English 1010W outcomes were developed by the ACME English team, were sent to all faculty for feedback, and then revised and approved by the APRC. This slide shows how they intersect. So the co-requisite course helps students apply and practice the outcomes of English 1010. So engage with and use authoritative sources matches with applying critical reading strategies, understanding, analyzing, and interpreting text. Craft logical arguments, links to applying writing strategies for developing thesis-driven essays with textual support, and apply language conventions matches obviously with apply language and documentation conventions consistently. In the workshop class, we want to engage students in the reading, writing, and revising process. So we've added that as an outcome, and we want to focus on effective skills, which we think will supplement success in engaging in those processes. Next slide. So this is a visual of the student experience. As the outcomes indicate, the workshop course supports students as they acquire the English 1010 outcomes. Rather than focus on separate assignments, this is an opportunity to help students understand a challenging text, practice documentation skills, workshop an essay, or meet any other need they may identify. The same instructor will teach both the workshop and the gateway course. Several ACME team members spoke of the value of tutor support in their current embedded classes, the way in which tutors facilitate one-on-one conferences and help students establish long-term relationships with support services. And we've included these tutors as an option for faculty. We've also been working with leadership to ensure all students have access to technology, though we can't promise that by fall of 2023. Our colleagues from other states uniformly have praised the resources that this model offers, both instructor and students, and we're very grateful for leadership for their support of this request. I'm going to turn it now to Drew, who's going to talk about some of the complementary transitional supports.
Thanks, James. So on the next slide, you'll see a breakdown of our transitional supports. Outside the classroom, we've proposed a real kind of multi-touch point approach to serving all our students, especially those who opt into this co-requisite remediation. First, the English team has requested faculty access to the CT State case management system, likely will remain CRM advised. And we envision a reporting structure in which faculty, staff, and administrators can relay messages to and about students and provide them the collaborative support they need to succeed. We've also proposed an orientation for all students, a day-long event in which students see the campus, meet faculty and staff, and engage enrollment, advising, and support services in a real low-stakes environment. The aim is, of course, to make connections for students and provide them with the knowledge of the processes, the infrastructure, and the support our campuses offer once they do become students. We also want to honor the important bridge programming that's happening across many of our campuses. While these curricular and structural changes we hope will help many students get immediately through gateway courses, we understand and acknowledge some of our students will come to our campuses needing that intensive pre-college support and transitional programming. We hope students who self-identify as needing more support can get it during the summer and winter sessions, but also during the semesters as they prepare to enroll in gateway courses. We have a group working on these recommendations, which we hope to deliver in the spring. And once students are enrolled in English 1010W, we envision offering them a menu of support options as part of the placement, advising, and early semester processes. We've submitted a matrix to help faculty and staff make recommendations for time spent in tutoring and writing centers, library services, study skill and student success workshops, and other campus programming. And then, again, the English team has recommended those embedded tutors to be available to instructors of 1010W. You know, we might think of it like this, that a traditional appointment tutor maybe meets with 6 students in a 3-hour tutoring shift, whereas an embedded tutor meets potentially with all 18 students in their assigned class in that same amount of time. So obviously we've got some work ahead of us these next few years, and James is going to talk to you about our plan to prepare faculty for these changes in fall 2023 and beyond.
So next slide, and we'll stay on this slide just for a second. We realize we're quickly approaching fall of 2023. The phase-in has delayed our progress a bit, but we hope that by the end of the year, 2022, we'll have final approval of our proposal on which the ACME team continues to provide feedback. And then we'll really be able to move forward and help all the faculty and chairs get ready to implement this policy in fall of 2023. So the next slide. To prepare English faculty, we've designed an optional 6-week online professional learning course that provides faculty with an overview of our guiding principles, with units on backwards design, inclusive instruction, reading strategies, affective skills, and assessment. During this course, participants will be reflecting on their instructional practices, designing assignments, and preparing the first 5 weeks of their class calendar. And we just want to pause at this moment and especially acknowledge our team chair, Dr. Rachel Yashicek from Norwalk Community College. Her contributions to this work and to this course have been immeasurable, and Joy and I are incredibly grateful to Rachel for this work. We hope that growing out of this PL course will be active learning communities so that the faculty who collaborate in the course continue to collaborate as they prepare to teach this. We also plan that the work done in this course, as well as other contributed activities and assignments, will become part of a repository of materials for all faculty. and will continue to offer webinars and workshops featuring faculty especially in the upcoming semester on topics such as reading strategies and grading the workshop class. And we'll wrap up by looking at ways in which we'll help beyond faculty, and I'll turn it back to Drew.
Thanks, James. So as we prepare our colleagues across the colleges, we'll continue offering our department chairs professional development opportunities to support them as they implement these co-requisites at scale on their campuses. In addition to the course design sessions we hosted earlier this year with the Dana Center, we're also planning a scheduling workshop for early 2023. These changes also obviously have an impact on placement and prerequisite requirements across our campuses. By the time co-requisites are implemented at scale, all students will technically be eligible for English 1010 when they become students at CT State. We look forward to working in concert with our colleagues across those disciplines and our guided pathways advising teams to ensure placement is correct for all our students. And finally, we value our frequent discussions with our colleagues in student support and student affairs across the state. We want to keep these lines of communication open and help them understand what these changes mean for their offices as we pursue a common goal of equitable student success. So that really brings us to the end. You can reach out to us via email, which is provided for you here on this slide. Thanks so much for your time today. And I'd like to pass the mic to our colleagues in ESOL. Hannah?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time. So my name is Moeckel-Rieke. I'm currently the chair of the ESL division at Nova Community College and co-chair of the ESL Council of Connecticut. Next slide, please. One more. You can show this and the next one together. Just a quick note on the national data. This national data, national and statewide, please also show the next one. National and statewide data shows why ESOL is so important. There has been a dramatic increase in immigrant populations on the national as well as the state level, and accordingly in the school system. Every war, civil unrest, economic crisis, and natural disaster is reflected in our student body, and it is our job to help these individuals overcome language barriers and leverage the education they bring with them and new education for their social and generational mobility. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Melanie.
Thank you, Hannah. Hi, I'm Melanie Majeski. I am a professor of ESL at Naugatuck Valley Community College, and I am co-chair of the ESL Council with my colleague, Hannah. So let's begin with some background of the ESOL programs and English language learners at our colleges. I'm going to start with some initiatives. Long ago, in a system office far away, really it was at the turn of the century, and the central office was in Hartford. We, along with all other disciplines, had to develop common course numbers. Some of you may have been around for that. And there was fairly wide latitude in developing these. And so the ESL Council developed multiple strands, multiple program strands, in order to honor the different populations at the various colleges. And then after that, if a college wanted to have a new course, they ran it through their curriculum committee, found an available number, sent it up to central office, and then there it was. It didn't go through the ESL Council. So again, our programs diverged even a little bit more. So last year, due to ACME, we brought all of our programs into alignment, and Hannah will address that in depth during our phase-in section when she talks about the ESOL framework that we developed. The next slide, please. All right, so let's begin with a very important distinction between ESOL and developmental English. Developmental English focuses on literacy skills, extended reading, essay writing, you can read it all there. It caters to native speakers who just need more exposure to the language. ESL focuses on language acquisition, vocabulary development, grammatical accuracy. We're catering to non-native speakers who are learning English for the very first time. And we do share some things with developmental English, and that we focus very often on reading and writing, but for us, it's a vehicle in order to teach language. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you've probably heard me use some terminology now. ESOL might be new for some of you. We've said ESL for years, but the new one is ESOL, and you can see the description there. We also now call ESL students ELLs, English language learners, or MLLs, multilingual learners. I'm going to talk about early and late arrival immigrants in just a minute. But probably what's very new to you is BICS and CALPS, and they are quite important when you are dealing with non-native speakers of English. BICS, as you can see here, are basic interpersonal communication skills, and CALP is cognitive academic language proficiency. Next slide, please. Oops, maybe not. Okay, let me talk a little bit about BICS and CALP before I talk about this slide. For BICS, it takes about 2 to 3 years for students to really develop their oral fluency, and they develop it through immersion, and that's very often our high school students. They are what we call ear learners. They have learned in the high school hallways, in the classrooms, talking to friends and socializing. CALP, which is the academic portion of language learning, takes about 5 to 7 years. Multiple studies have been done saying that that's what it needs. It focuses on reading and writing and the academic skills needed for college. And there is a symbiotic relationship really between critical thinking, which is what we want our students to be able to do in college, and language. And it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. They really do go together. Their language proficiency, academic language proficiency, and their critical thinking skills are very much integrated. Okay, so here we go to the types of ELLs that enter our community college. And as you can see, our programs need to meet myriad ELL needs. So our first type of student is an early arrival high school student. This is a student who might have come even during middle school. Often they'll definitely have more than 4 or more years of high school. Very often their oral fluency is great, so they've got great mix. And the CALP can vary greatly, depending on what school they went to and what their educational background here has been. Then we have late arrival high school students. They have come with less than 4 years of high school. And both BICS and CALP need work. So the listening and speaking skills are not as developed, and their academic language proficiency definitely needs work. Our next group are the international students. You might know them as F1 visa students. And most of them have partial or completed degrees in their countries. Some of them may not. And we really, depending on what country they have come from, their skill levels will vary widely. We have no idea what their BICS or their CALP will be. And our last is, if we can even call it that, non-traditional students. I mean, I think most of our ESL students or ESOL students come from a highly varied life background. And so their language learning backgrounds will also be highly varied. And we don't know what their educational background is. It depends on what country they've come from. It depends on what their educational background was there and what educational opportunities were available to them there. So again, their BICS and CALP will vary widely. One thing I would like to emphasize before I hand it over to Hannah is that just because an ELL sounds like they have native-like fluency when you speak to them, it doesn't mean that they're proficient in academic reading and writing skills. These are really separate things. There's just no way to judge until you see a sample and some indication of their reading and their writing processes. And that's it for me. I'll hand it back to Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. So next slide, please. One more. Okay, since our programs serve very different student populations, placing students is more complex than placing native speakers and traditional students. Research therefore suggests to use a mixture of measures that may include standardized testing, writing samples, questionnaires, and an interview, which is why involving ESL in the advising process is so important. That is exactly what we're going to implement across the state by the fall of 2023. Next slide, please. So this is probably what you want to learn most about from the fall on, the aligned curriculum that Melanie was mentioning before, and that the ESL Council has worked on over a long summer and 2 semesters basically, is going to be implemented. Right now there are 9 colleges that have ESL, so it's going to be rolled out there for now. And so the boxes look maybe a little complex, but it's not that hard. So the green boxes are the core integrated skills classes with an emphasis on academic reading and writing skills. Students do not all enter at the first level and then go through all levels, but they come in at their appropriate skill level. Strong students may also be able to skip a level. They can also do it twice if they're very strong and go forward fast. The classes on the right are electives that students may choose to enhance particular skills, such as grammatical accuracy, pronunciation, or oral fluency. Next slide, please. Oh, by the way, you can find that, if you can go back for 1 second. I don't know if you can go back. Yeah. If you see on the slide, you can find that framework also on the ACME ESOL website. So it's all there and some background information as well. Thank you. Next slide. On the top level, so students coming out of the ESL framework can go to either English 101 proper if they're ready for that, or they can go to English 101 with embedded support, or they can go to English 101 with an ESOL embedded support. So you see the embedded support course is eligible for students either that skip over the top level but want extra support, or those that test into English 101 a little bit under English 1010, but on the ESOL side. The English 1010 and the ESOL support course are taught by the same ESOL instructor, while the content course, so while the English 1010 course follows the regular curriculum, you will see that the ESOL support course is slightly different from the English support course because it focuses more on language. Academic vocabulary, syntax, advanced grammar structures, and ELL appropriate scaffolding, which may have to do with putting the assignments into a language that is more understandable and so forth. Next slide, please. One more. So pre-alignment programs were actually very heterogeneous across the state, not only in size, but also in the shape that these programs took or the classes students needed to take. In some cases, students had to complete all ESL coursework, and sometimes even developmental coursework after that, before they could enter credit-bearing classes that counted towards graduation. In the new aligned curriculum, students focus on developing the academic reading and writing and critical thinking skills in English as they move along, but they have also increasing access to mainstream classes while still working on those skills. So less reading intensive, reading and writing intensive classes such as mathematics, art, music, computer programming may come first or may come earlier. Later business classes, science, criminal justice, and so on and so forth. We have not figured out all those pieces, and that is one of the things in the phase-in that we will have to deal with. Next slide, please. In the future, we're hoping to smooth out more of the transitions to a college education for ELLs in through various measures. On the top level, we will implement summer bridge programs and high school partnerships across the state, which should further reduce the time spent in developmental coursework after college entry. But most of all, it will help students to actually stay in class. We have this experience, if students come at the last minute and did not take the summer bridge, many of them are really struggling with the financial aid piece. There are documents that have handed in, and some of them lose the semester because they cannot get all those pieces together, and the transition is just very hard. So it softens that transition out. At the bottom, if you wish, we're also hoping to roll out more immersion programs, particularly for refugees and new immigrants, that will both allow them to move forward fast and to regain their credentials and qualify for new and better jobs. At the intermediate and advanced levels, we're hoping to leverage and roll out more learning communities, which will allow students to progress faster and gain early access to mainstream courses through immersion type, cohort-based instruction, which has proven to be very successful. Those accelerated programs may not be the right choice for every student, however. We cannot forget that a number of our students are working 2 or 3 jobs. Sometimes the younger students are also taking care of their family because they have the best potential to be the biggest earners. So they often have many, many responsibilities. Next slide, please. So this, we have a little bit of data, but I want to warn you, this is very preliminary, very selective. We do not have all the statewide data yet. That is one thing that we're working on. But this is just a little example from one of those acceleration programs. And you see on the left, the blue shows completion of English 101 in the first semester after they finish the top level of ESOL. The orange means 2 in the second or third semester after they finish. So you see, they're not, it's not totally abominable, but there are a number of students that take more than one semester to get past the English 101 hurdle. On the right side, you see some preliminary data on how students did who went through the acceleration immersion program. They had a much higher completion rate of English 101 in the first semester. On top of that, something is not reflected here is that the retention rate was also incredible. Retention rate in the regular classes was around 80%, 75, varying 75 to 80%. After the acceleration program, it was over 90%. Next slide, please. You can also see that through acceleration programs, so you see the traditional sequence, and again, that does not apply to every student. Students may come in at a later date in the program, then that means they do not have that many semesters. You already see in the traditional sequence plus the ALP, the accelerated program that already exists with English 101 and an ESOL support course that shortens the sequence. And in an accelerated program, it would be similar because it would sort of boil down that process again to 2 intensive semesters. But I cannot emphasize enough, this is not for everybody. Next slide, please. So in order to get there, we have a lot of work left to do. We're going to focus in the fall on rolling out the framework, which is going to be a big change for a number of colleges. And like Drew and James, we're going to work with faculty in the form of retreats. We already have a repository of materials for the ESOL it's now 1602 support course. We will work, we have not determined what we definitely with webinars and possibly other forms of working together with our colleagues to train them and help faculty to sort of to adapt to the new curriculum as needed. We will have to do some norming sessions across campuses because the placement method will be different, will be aligned across the state, and because the programs were very different and are serving different student populations, we will have to make sure that our students end up in similar levels so that it is actually possible for students to move. We will have learning community training retreats, and finally also roll out some more writing across the curriculum training, supporting multilingual learners. Rachel has already organized one of them. We want more of those that can be accessible to all the campuses. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll turn it back to my colleague, Melanie.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, so it's a complex field, TESOL, and the students take time to develop their language skills, and it really does take a lot of time. And it's also a very personal thing. Language is personal, and that's how you That's how you show your personality, right? So it is crucial that all the people at all the colleges work together to support the ELLs. We can't do this alone. We really, really do need you to work with us and to work with them. And we're looking forward to continue our collaboration with all of you. Thank you. Yes, if you have any questions, there we go. There are emails. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. If all the panelists and such would put their cameras back on, we'll start the questions that have come into the chat. Again, I'm Tam O'Day-Stevens. Nice to see everybody. AVP for Teaching and Learning. One of the first questions that came into the chat was about funding for the embedded tutors and how that's going to be evaluated. The number of tutors as well as the funding related to the tutors that are going to be embedded.
Or Tam, hi, thank you. And again, I'm Mike Stefanowicz. I can answer that question because I've been doing some of the financial modeling. And I will say that the concept of an embedded tutor did come out of faculty recommendations in the spring of 2022. And we've heard that message loud and clearly. Both James and Drew have heard that from their team. One of the reasons that we looked at the cohort model versus the commingled model, which was also at the table, or the ALP model, which many folks are familiar with, was to try to balance the cost of the embedded section and also include funding for tutors. So as we move towards the fall 23 semester, right, there will be one budget for Connecticut State. Obviously, that will be dispersed out to campuses, but we needed to build a structure that was sustainable and would allow for embedded tutors in the sections that will exist for folks who want them. I think James and Drew said that, you know, not everyone may wish to have a tutor in their embedded section, but we wanted to make that available because we heard the importance of that. So we are committed to providing that funding. We may be utilizing some of our existing tutors, right, who may exist in our tutoring centers, and ask them to serve in a little different capacity. I'm not saying that one-on-one tutoring will go away, but some of those tutors may serve in a different role. So that was really part of building the model, looking at the cap sizes on the courses, and then considering the commingle versus a cohort to support that. Thank you.
Mike, a follow-up question came in. Will they be available in all math, English, and ESOL?
Yeah, I think we need to look at that. I know that recently the question has come up about tutors for the math sections, and it hasn't been something that's been on our radar as strongly as it has been for English. That came out very early. But I think we need to work with the math team and see what would be proposed, which sections would include tutoring. Certainly the idea of moving to pathways doesn't automatically bring to mind tutoring for the pathways, but embedded sections or co-requisite sections of math, there may be a need for tutors. So I think we need to look at that and talk and look at a recommendation on that. For ESOL, the paired course of the highest level of ESOL with English, certainly there may be tutoring in those sections. But again, we have to look at how many sections of those will exist, and if those faculty make that recommendation, are requesting tutors. One of the things we know in general from the student success data is that students don't always do optional. So one of the concepts behind embedded tutors is to take away a little bit of that stigma of students having to go to a support center or a tutoring center, having to make an appointment, and meeting one-on-one, right? Often students come up from an environment where they feel tutoring is only for those who are failing. And by having the embedded tutor right there in the classroom and built into the structure of the course, it often opens up that relationship, and people connect with their tutors a little bit more strongly.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
The next question that came in the chat was, how will students know what pathway to take? How will students know what pathway to take?
I'll take that question. So there are several ways. If a student is a STEM student, most likely their program has specified specific courses that they're required to take. But for non-STEM students, a program might specify something like Math 1000 or higher, or Math 1100 or higher. So for programs like that, the program coordinators have been given the option of making a recommendation of the best course in that range for their students to take. So some programs have sent forward that recommendation, and it will be published in the catalog along with the general math requirement. For programs that haven't made a recommendation, the default recommendation will be to take quantitative reasoning.
Thank you, Deb. The next question that came in is, what are the modalities of the co-requisite courses? What are the various modalities that are going to be offered?
I could take that for English. The co-requisite course was actually approved with all 4 modalities: traditional, hybrid, online, and LRON. We realize that may not be ideal for every student. We do want to offer campuses the opportunity to offer all those modalities. We also imagine models where, say, that English 1010 course was offered in one modality, but say the support course might be offered on campus. So there's lots of flexibility there, but we do want campuses to decide what's best for their students.
Thank you, James.
I'll answer for math. For math, all the modalities have been recommended except asynchronous online. But that still leaves the option for like an LRON course to take place. It's only the asynchronous that we're not recommending.
I'd like to add on for ESOL. I think initially our thought was, or pre-COVID, our thought was that on-ground instruction is the best format for ESOL, and it often is. But we have also found that a number of our students do enjoy LRON version because they work a lot. So I think the mix is going to do the trick, to have some like this and some on ground.
Thank you, everyone. The next question that came in the chat: when will campus resources be assessed on the various campuses? Some campuses have certain resources such as writing labs and others do not.
I can speak to that a bit on English, I guess. We have reached out to chairs to assess writing lab resources and that sort of thing on campuses. As we understand it too, tutoring is going to remain local for a bit. I think Mike or Amy could maybe speak to that, but I know we've started to sort of take stock of what our campuses are offering currently. Our tutoring work group also recently reached out to sort of initiate those conversations with the tutoring group also. So that's kind of on the English side. Those are the sorts of conversations we're having. Mike or Amy, do you want to address the other bit?
I think you hit it on the head, Drew. It's going to take time to assess what every campus has, where there is disparities, and to start to address those disparities. That's not going to be something that's going to happen immediately. And I do think it's going to be really the conversations with each of the, and I know Tam does a lot of work with the various tutoring centers. So we will be relying on working with her and her staff very closely to see where those resources need to get bolstered in the future. So again, I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation. I know there's also the same conversation with the computer labs, the requirement of having as many sections as possible have access to computer labs, and we're going to have to work with scheduling to make sure that where possible those resources can be deployed so that the support classes have access, especially in English, to the computer labs on campuses. Some campuses have many computer labs. Some are still working on rebuilding them because they unfortunately were partially decimated during the pandemic when computers were handed out to students who needed them at home. So it's an ongoing project, but it is one that will absolutely be kind of chipped away at over time.
I'm just checking. I know we're at time, so I want to be respectful of people's schedules. I think we had one other question that came in the chat. If you'd like me to hit it, Maya, or leave it, you let me know. It seems like an easy question, not easy, but I think it's directed towards Hannah and Melanie. What campuses offer ESOL? And in the future, do you know which campuses will be offering ESOL?
Melanie, do you want to jump in or do you want me to take this?
Yeah, we have 9 campuses
Yeah.
that offer ESOL, and we foresee that it will stay that way for a while. Some of the campuses are quite small, and they don't have the population pool to run a program.
I would like to piggyback on that. I think we had one request to maybe reinstate ESOL that had existed at a program that was pre-pandemic, pre-everything. So we'll have to look into that. And I think we also have to see how we can leverage technology programming that is there in case there is not enough of a pool of students to create a whole program, so that students have access to the kind of support that we're hoping to offer.
Melanie, I just want to jump on that because I was going to make that statement as well. You know, in any of these courses, whether it's math, English, or ESOL, by offering the courses in a variety of modalities, campuses that traditionally did not have the resources available to offer their students these courses, those will become open to students. There's also the availability when campuses are located in a close proximity to each other that students before who may have not had access to the on-ground version of those classes can now, through public transportation or just through regular transportation, by driving themselves, can move to a different campus to take the specific classes that they need that may not be offered at their location that they take the majority of their courses. So I mean, I anticipate that students in every corner of the state will have access to ESOL in one variety or another, whether it means having to physically go to a different campus or take a class through an Elron version.
I know we need to wrap up because we're over, but I just wanted to address one item. I've seen some questions, and we've recently been asked by some folks about the numbering. There's a bit of a discrepancy where the 101 or the 1010 is above 1,000, whereas the math numbers for the support sections are below 1,000. I do think we need to look at that. That is how those courses came through our alignment process and through the APRC and the transitional governance. So if we were going to change numbers or align those, we would have to go through the new governance structure, which is being stood up. Just a note, pay attention, there's elections happening right now. But I just want to stress that in either case, the support sections are non-graduation credit and non-transferable credit. And they will, by policy, be graded pass or non-pass, so they do not count towards a student's GPA. So they're numbered a little bit differently, but they have some of the same results for students. And there's some certain restrictions in the policy around them. We can certainly look at that though, because some people have raised concerns that it might be confusing for students or for advisors if courses are numbered below and above 1,000. So just wanted to address that, and I apologize. I know we're out of time, so I'll let Maya maybe wrap up at this point. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, just to wrap up, I just want to thank all the panelists for this information. And just to let everybody know, this information will be posted on the ctstate.edu/webinar site, along with all the other webinars that have been recorded in the recent weeks and months. There will be more information to come. You know, this is the first phase, information about phase 1 and what to expect in the fall of 2023. But this is a multi-year process. And so along that way, data will be collected. The teams will be analyzing the student success, the directions and trajectories of those students, and pivoting where necessary. So again, amazing work so far. It's a journey that many of us are on, but it's really coming to fruition. So it's nice to see. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.